Hello everyone, it's been a while, but I'm back. I haven't felt that productive recently because I've been trying to get a new job, basically trying to move from freelance into a permanent writing position, and it's been weighing on my mind, and money worries, all the usual. So really, it's been a while since I've written a brand new short story, but I have one today for you. But before I get into that, I just want to remind you that my novel, Elena in Exile, is now available on Amazon, on Kindle, paperback, and quite possibly even in bookshops. I'd love it if someone tried to get it from a bookshop, or asked, you'd have to ask probably at the counter, see if they can order it for you. That would be an interesting thing to find out. Maybe I'll try it myself. Anyway, so here's the book, Elena in Exile. It's a crime novel set in London, seedy Soho, and yeah, people seem to like it. It's hard for me to get people to know about it, but when they do, they seem to enjoy it. Anyway, there's that. I've also recently created a set of 7, here's a selection of 5 of them, story samplers, and the whole point of these is basically there's 7 stories. They cost 99 cents on ebook. They're all in different genres, from historical to literary fiction, science fiction, that kind of thing. Each one contains 7 stories. They're shorter, quicker to read, and you can collect the set if you want. And 2 of them are available at the moment for free. That is Cold Water Shock and Lunacy, which is a collection of comic short stories. So anyway, 7 samplers, also available on Amazon, exclusively on Amazon, I suspect. Anyway, so that's my plug for my work. But for the moment, I'm going to read you a brand new story. Now, I've changed my system for ideation. You may remember I talked about the hat on a previous edition. Maybe I didn't. Well, what I did with the hat is I've basically got a whole bunch of story titles which I just randomly produced from the top of my head, and I put them in the hat, and I have I pulled a title out, and I thought I'm going to write a story based on that title. And so the title of story number 163 is Bookshop Cop. When Charlie started his brand new day job, the boys at the Wire House had teased him mercilessly, dubbing him a bookshop cop. His nightclub doorman buddies weren't typically very literate, or at least not in English, so they found his desire to wander around the multiple floors of the Charing Cross Road Book Emporium highly amusing. Their teasing was well meant, however. They liked Charlie, the only black doorman on the detail, and he'd not detected any overt racism yet, which made a pleasant change. In truth, however, Charlie loved his new role and happily slipped into referring to himself as the bookshop cop, rather than by his more mundane designation, security operative. He worked at the store 4 days per week and at the Wire House Club on Friday and Saturday nights, and between both roles had secured enough income to feel confident about dating again, or at least, if not right now, then soon. Having spent 3 years in prison for GBH, Charlie lived with a permanent sensation of unspent shame. The condition diminished his confidence and made the very notion of becoming intimately involved a worse prospect than the time he'd done in the scrubs. He hadn't had anything to offer a loved one, he felt, until now. With both jobs contributing to an acceptable wage, he'd rented a 2-bedroom flat in Stratford, a nest into which to invite new companions when the time was right. Plus, he loved being among the books. Charlie had spent his time in prison keeping fit, studying English composition and reading. He planned to write a memoir one day, a book that would explain how a poor kid from Rugeley could end up adrift in London's underworld. Charlie had moved to the capital on a whim, had fallen into dealing drugs, and his watershed moment came while defending a young runner from violent assault by a 30-year-old solicitor with an A-grade cocaine habit and lots of important buddies. The lawyer had ended up in hospital, and Charlie had been made an example of. The shame of the conviction and his own uncontrollable frustration and rage had left a deep scar on Charlie's soiled soul. Hopefully his new post-Scrubs life could begin to repair the damage. The sections Charlie most enjoyed walking through, and where he took special care, were the classic section of the fiction floor and the art books. Some of those Taschen coffee table books were worth 80 quid. And the security tags on them didn't always fire when someone absent-mindedly walked them out of the front doors in their bag or under their jacket. Charlie had once spotted a junkie acquaintance trying to steal such books for their resale value in some of the second-hand shops up and down Charing Cross Road. The young man, thin as a teaspoon, had flinched in recognition as Charlie strode towards him, dropping the huge Georgia O'Keeffe book to the floor as if it had suddenly become red hot. Charlie had subtly walked Alfie out into the street, neglecting to inform his superior, who tended to call the police first and ask pertinent questions later. Apart from when dealing with homeless people and junkies, Charlie tended to observe a strict code of conduct. He'd stop thieves at the door on their first attempt and remind them that they hadn't paid for the items concealed on their person. Inevitably, the chancers would pretend to have forgotten and would be embarrassed into buying the item. That would often prove sufficient punishment, especially for a student facing a £50 charge for a book about jurisprudence. Charlie would almost feel guilty until he reminded himself how lenient this strategy was when compared to a conviction for petty theft, and the moral quandaries about disclosure a criminal record would bring these young people. The only times Charlie had to get physical or call the police was with the belligerent, abusive or drunken types who would take out their frustrations on the hapless and innocent bookshop staff. Charlie's colleagues were uniformly well-educated, middle-class and fearful of any species of conflict, whereas Charlie knew how to employ a firm elbow grip or thumb pull to subtly link at a power he'd hopefully never have to use again. 4 months into his new job, Charlie was well liked, and he'd received several invitations to the pub for post-work drinks. One day he might even feel able to take up such an invitation, especially if the pretty assistant manager Lucy was the one offering the invite. For now, he was biding his time, learning the ropes and keeping his head down, as his probation officer would put it. During his lunch break, when the weather permitted, Charlie would take the latest book he'd bought with his staff discount out onto the tiny 4th-floor sun terrace, where a few cafe tables were occasionally placed during the busiest summer months. Most of the time these were unoccupied, except during the lunchtime and early afternoon rush, when laptop-wielding students and would-be novelists would congregate to hammer out a few hundred words together, yet alone. Charlie would postpone his lunch break until 3 p.m. just to ensure a free table. He wanted to be alone with Kurt Vonnegut's fragile, funny, unpredictable characters and the author's own amusing interjections. Vonnegut felt like a bantering buddy, and it had saddened Charlie a little when he Googled and found that the author had died many years before. He wondered whether there might be future Vonneguts amongst the students and remote workers in the cafe. He fantasized about offering a pertinent suggestion over the shoulder of a young female author. The conversation would go something like this. "Excuse me, I couldn't help noticing you were writing about a doorman. Sorry, I don't mean to be nosy." "No, that's no problem. I'm kind of stuck actually. I need him to prevent a fight with a simple move, but it's not exactly my area of expertise." "I might be able to help you there. How angry are the blokes about to fight? I assume they're blokes." "Yes, well, they're shouting at one another. Fronting, shoving and puffing up their chests." "Right, something like that. And is this inside or outside the venue?" "Outside, at the queue to get into the club." "Doorman should put his body between the men, facing more towards the bigger or more aggressive of the two." The author's tapping at her laptop here. "Yes, and just place a hand gently on the guy's shoulder. Gently, but with enough of a grip to show how quickly it could get nasty." "I see. Subtle." "Exactly. It's about attitude and suggestion." In this imaginary scenario, the author, immensely grateful and now free from her writer's block, asked for Charlie's name. In the extended version of the fantasy, there's a coda. 1 year later, the author is back, launching her debut novel in the performance space on the 3rd floor. She nods to Charlie, standing at the back of the room, as she reads the scene featuring the doorman. It's a powerful sequence. At the end of the reading, the author comes over and hands him a signed book. When he opens the novel, entitled either Doorways or Admission, there's a dedication. "To Charlie, who provided the key." Charlie was running the familiar fantasy through his head at the end of a busy Friday shift. Already tired from being on his feet most of the day, he'd have to head straight to the warehouse for his evening doorman shift. In his fatigued state, Charlie almost missed the telltale sign of a theft in progress. Charlie frowned. The book thief wasn't the usual junkie or impoverished student. A mixed-race kid, surely no older than 11 or 12, wearing an oversized puffer jacket, loping towards the stairs from the art section, his arms low at his waistband, jacket zipped fully up, in mid-August. Charlie didn't want to jump to conclusions, but there was something about the shifty manner of the kid that alerted his sixth sense. The boy's eyes were darting all over the place, yet avoiding his own as he ducked past Charlie and began to trot down the stairs. Charlie looked over at the tables. Damien had been past with the trolley a few minutes ago and had arranged a pristine new display of Banksy books. One of them was noticeably absent. Charlie began to follow his charge downstairs, hanging back a little to see how he behaved on the ground floor. Would he spot the sensor barriers and rush them, or hang back and wait for a quiet moment? The kid adopted the latter approach, slowing down and feigning interest in, of all things, a display of books about knitting. Damn it, kid, if only you'd turned to the Lewis Hamilton biographies to your left, thought Charlie. Found what you're looking for, was Charlie's opener. He'd found this ambiguous phrase usually inspired either telltale panic or a non-committal shrug. The kid attempted the latter, but one of his hands slipped from his jacket and the corner of the Banksy book protruded for a second. The kid pushed it back into place and locked eyes with Charlie. The look contained more fear than aggression. I don't know, what's all this woolen shit? Charlie laughed and used the firm hand technique he described to his fictional author. The kid seemed to shrink in his clothes. Keep the book out of sight and come with me. A raised eyebrow of hope, and the kid did as he'd been told, while Charlie walked in between the stacks into the stockroom, fortunately unoccupied. Show me, Charlie said. The kid did not protest, simply letting the book fall from under his jacket into his thin arms. What's your name? Michael, the boy said, eyes on the book in his hands as Charlie took it from him. A celebration of the work of the outsider artist and graffiti legend Banksy, apparently signed by the author. The front page contained a swirl of spray paint that still retained its plasticky tang. Charlie flipped the book over, looking at the price tag. 65 quid! Fuck's sake! He couldn't help exclaiming. Why do you want this? Michael shuffled from foot to foot. Definitely no older than 13, and a malnourished 13 at that. He's my hero. I want to be like him. Drop art anywhere you like. Make a bomb. Charlie responded, flicking through the pages. He wasn't a huge Banksy fan, too polemical for his liking, but he could admire the artistry, the daring, the sheer chutzpah of the work, gorgeously photographed within. So you thought you'd steal it? I can't exactly afford it, can I? The boy replied, a tempting attitude. It was like a puppy barking at a pit bull. The comment annoyed Charlie. See, this is the problem with you Gen Zers, or whatever you are. You want everything for no effort. Why don't you save up your pocket money, do a paper round or something? The kid giggled. Paper round? Is this the 18th century? I don't get no pocket money. Mum's not working at the moment. And Dad? Michael simply shrugged. That told Charlie all he needed to know. He was about to do something very stupid. I'm going to regret this, but come with me. Carrying the book under one arm, Charlie walked Michael back out into the store. Give me a minute and wait by the door, will you? This would be interesting. An experiment, if you like. Charlie walked over to the lower floor tills, where Lucy was holding the fort. She smiled at him and frowned a little when he dropped the book onto the counter. He'd surreptitiously ripped the back of the dust jacket. Must have got torn in transit. I've got a shy art school kid asking if he can have a few quid off. Lucy drew in breath. We're supposed to contact the distributor if that happens. Put in a refund request. Come on, Luce. You know it's not worth the hassle. Maybe put it through my staff discount. Lucy was no fool. She flicked her eyes over to the door, to where Michael still stood, now pretending to be fascinated with the latest Richard Osman cozy crime bestseller. She examined the book. Well, we can't sell it full price, that's for sure. Okay then. A few taps at the till later, she'd rung through the book for £30. Charlie produced some crumpled notes. He gave me cash. I think he's on the spectrum. Okay, Charlie, drop it. What's with the community outreach? As she said this, Lucy took a piece of sellotape and painstakingly repaired the torn cover. There you go, good as new. Hope he gets value from it. She handed the book back to Charlie. Perhaps there would be repercussions for this, although Charlie had the odd feeling there wouldn't be. Lucy was a kindly soul, for a manager. She even winked as he walked away, striding over to Michael to deliver his prize. Kid, turns out we're supposed to toss damaged books, so you get it for free. But it wasn't... Listen, when you're onto a good thing, keep stum, Charlie chastened. And you might want to hide this under the bed or something. Michael nodded, hugging the book to his chest. I will! And the next time I see you in here, you're buying something, okay? Charlie doubted there would be a next time. He was gambling on the kid realizing how lucky he'd been, and maybe even feeling a little bit of the weight that Charlie would always carry. Shame. It didn't always have to be a bad thing. Thanks, Michael muttered softly. He wasn't used to using the word, maybe because he wasn't used to experiencing the kindness that might prompt it. Michael tucked the Banksy tome under his arm, half-skipped between pedestrians towards a beaten-up manual scooter, and began to propel himself home. Charlie smiled. Maybe he needed a new fantasy, one in which a young outsider artist from southeast London grew to graffiti prominence and got his own retrospective and accompanying book, dedicated, of course, to his lenient Bookshop Cop. There you go. I don't know what kind of weird announcements happening out there in the street. But there you go. That was my first attempt to produce a short story based on a random title. And now, in a surprise new feature, I will choose the title for my next short story. Rummage around, trying not to look. I don't know if you can see that. I'm not looking at it. All right, what does it say? Will we ever be free? Question mark. Okay. I did this so long ago I can't even remember writing these, but the next story will be called Will We Ever Be Free? But for now, I hope you enjoyed this. If you like my short stories, consider buying one of my sampler books. There are many to choose from. Just go onto Gavin Boyter on Amazon. I'm literally the only author on there with that name, and you'll see all the books I've published. And yeah, let me know what you thought of this. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Hit the like button. Do all those lovely things. Maybe even leave a comment. And I will see you again with another short story, much quicker than the gap between this one and the last. Honest. Bye for now.